evening. This is Hudson Valley Week in Review, where we look back at the people, places, and issues making news in Ulster County and the region. I'm Greene. We begin tonight with the growing craft beer industry, specifically here in the Hudson Valley. According to a recent report by the State Brewers Association and New York Wine and Grape Foundation, the number of craft breweries soared from 95 to 207 between 2012 and January of this year. There's even a Statecraft New York Act, which has reduced costs and increased production caps for smaller breweries. One of the most popular breweries in the area is Kingston's own Keegan Ales. We spoke to brewmaster Tommy Keegan about the growing appeal for craft beers.
I was the head brewer at a brewery on Long Island and got wind of this building in Kingston. And I have a lot of family in Kingston. My family's been here since the Revolutionary War, before the Revolutionary War even. So I have a lot of ties to Kingston. It's always been kind of our second hometown. But I found this building in Kingston that was for sale, and believe it or not, nobody would buy the building because there was an old brewery stuck in here. So being a brewer myself, I worked out a deal. The city was involved with it for some old municipal loans and stuff, and worked out a deal where I was able to get the brewery and buy the building, and it was all here. So that's how I ended up in Kingston, moving to Kingston. 2003 is when we first opened up. I moved to Kingston in the spring of 2003, and we were able to make beer by, I think we were brewing in August and selling beer in September of that year. Again, because there was a brewery here, we were able to get up and running really quickly. You know, the craft beer industry has really been exploding lately, and there are maybe 70 breweries when I first entered the scene in the state, and now there's over 200. So we were really the first ones in the Hudson Valley, with the exception of some restaurant breweries, some brew pubs, but the first production brewery in the Hudson Valley to be in business since, I don't know, forever, since Prohibition almost. Mother's Milk is by far our big seller. That was named one of the top 10 stouts in North America by the New York Times. And since then, it's really taken off to be our flagship brand. It's a stout, so it looks dark, and people are sometimes afraid of it because of the color, but it's got a lot of oatmeal in it, and it's got milk, sugar, lactose in it. So it's very creamy and silky, and it's easy drinking. It's low alcohol. It's only about 5% alcohol. So I like to say it drinks a lot. Doesn't drink as dark as it looks, you know. It's a real easy drinking beer. Some of our other beers that are very popular are Hurricane Kitty, our IPA, which is named after my grandmother, so that's naturally the family beer. And most recently, we've had two new brands that we've launched that have really been successful. One is called Bind Climber, which is a session IPA, which means it's low in alcohol, real light, really easy drinking, but really hoppy. And that beer has been available for almost a year now, and it's turning into one of our biggest sellers. And then we make a coffee version of our Mother's Milk called Joe Mama's Milk, because down the street from the brewery is a coffee house called Monkey Joe's, and they make a special roast of Sumatra coffee for us. And we add that to the Mother's Milk along with a lot of brown sugar, and gives it like a lot of flavors of molasses. And that's another one best beer in New York State a couple of years ago. So that's another real popular brand of ours. The craft beer Boogaloo in Saugerties at Cantine Fields. That's, I think they're expecting over 150 different beers there. I don't know how many thousands of people are going to be showing up. This is the first time that they've done it. Our friends at WDST are pretty much hosting it, and this is their first time doing this event. So everybody's kind of wondering what to expect. Well, I'm friends with all the folks at DST, the DJs, and I mean, I'm friends with Gary Chekhov, the owner, and a bunch of people over there. So I actually was bumped into Gary at a party, I forget where, we cross paths occasionally, and he told me he had this idea for it, and I immediately, you know, said, yeah, I'll be part of that. That sounds like fun. They're fun though because it gives you an opportunity to present your beer to people that, craft beer fans, and see their reaction immediately. So I'm really looking forward to. We have a new beer called the Hefeweizen, our Summerfest is a Hefeweizen style, and I look forward to bringing that out and putting a first sip in people's mouths and seeing their reaction. Those events are great for being able to get feedback from thousands of people in a short period of time, a couple of hours. It's also a good way to network with some of my friends that own other breweries. We always get busy in our own four walls, but we're a pretty tight-knit fraternity, so it's a nice day to be able to get out and chat with the other guys and see what's going on and see what they're up to, what they've been doing creatively. Well, it's like any business, it's important to be involved in your community. The community is made up of people, and those are my customers, and this is where I live. I live 1 mile away from here. This is where my children are being raised, and this is where my life is, so of course it's important. This is where all my employees' lives are. Yeah, of course I do. In the 12 years that we've been here, it's been amazing the turnaround that I've seen Kingston undergoing, and it's still undergoing. The art and music scene is just incredible. I had a gentleman at the bar just a few minutes ago. We were looking at probably putting a date in to get him to play here. We have live music 3 nights a week. I didn't have a single open date until November, because there's so many musicians moving up here and they want to play in the area. The art scene is great. I don't know if you're familiar with the O Positive Festival, but we've been very active in that since its inception, and that's been, what's the right word for it? A huge catalyst for the whole scene. All the restaurants, uptown and downtown, both are exploding. And at first I was a little bit skeptical that there were, too many restaurants per square foot, but they all seem to be doing great. And we, as a town, we seem to really have turned the corner to start bringing outside people into Kingston, which is, people are starting to look to Kingston as a place to come again. It's been a long time since that's been the way it is, so I'm happy to see that.
We also met with one of Kingston's newest brewers, Patrick Clancy, who's getting ready to start selling his craft beer within a few months. He talks to us about his company, Great Life Brewing.
I've been making beer as a home brewer for many, many years. In fact, the first few batches I made many years ago was before it was actually legalized during the Carter administration. So, hate to date myself, but I've been making beer for about that long. But my background actually is in engineering and information technology. I've been a civil engineer for about half of my career, spent about 22 years with the Army Corps of Engineers, and then moved on to some other organizations in IT. But a couple of years ago, at the encouragement of my dear wife, she's convinced me that it'd be fun to have a last act of a professional career of actually making something. I've never made a product that I can offer to somebody that they could take home and enjoy, like beer. And the beer was a natural. I've been doing it as a hobby for many years. So now we're about to go into production. So we'll see what that's like. Kingston's a great location to open up a business, especially beer brewing. So what we were looking to do, in fact, our mission is trying to bring additional craft beer to the Hudson Valley. I mean, Hudson Valley is a great place to live and a great place to work and play. And to have a beer that sort of reflects all of the character and charm of the Hudson Valley was one of our goals in creating Great Life. So one of the reasons we chose Kingston. I just think that, beer is a wonderful kind of a universal beverage that everybody just loves and enjoys. And it's a complicated story going back into the days of Prohibition, and when there used to be thousands of breweries, probably, a number of breweries in Kingston itself. But what's happened is they've all kind of homogenized over the years. People are now kind of looking for some unique and fresh and especially local taste of unique beer. And that's one of the reasons that you're seeing the craft beer industry grow so much over the last 10 or 15 years, with no end in sight, really. We're going to be making a number of different kinds of beers, but our 4 sort of flagship beers that we're launching with are is a milk stout, which is a very kind of a sweet, dark, heavy sort of beer, a wit beer, a beer that's a cream ale, which happens to be in competition right now for first place in the national homebrewing competition, which we're very proud of, the recipe for this, I should add. And of course, an IPA, an India Pale Ale, which is probably the most popular beer around the country at the moment. It really comes, my wife and I have had this conversation many times going back into the years that we feel like we have a really great life. I mean, we've got, you know, our wonderful selves, our wonderful family. We live in this wonderful Hudson Valley. And we joke about it to each other like, this is a great life. And when it came to figuring out a name for the brewery, we thought that an extension of that concept, it's a great life, and hence the naming of the brewery. This whole area that we're standing in, when I first walked into the door, was pretty much from floor to maybe halfway up the ceiling with flea market items. Flea market things all over the floor. I couldn't even tell if there were actually drains on the floor. There was so much stuff in here. There weren't, unfortunately, because that's one of the things we had to do. So we had to clear it all out. We had to put trench drains and drainage into the floor. I had to do an extensive amount of plumbing and electrical and steam fitting work, all to have it all ready to receive the brewing equipment and be able to hook that up and proceed. So yeah, it's been quite a bit of extra work in getting it ready. We're just about ready to do our first test brews, which we call water brews, making an entire batch of beer without any of the ingredients except for water, so that you go through the process. So once we complete that, then I'll start a series of real brews, and they're kind of practice brews, but what I need to be able to do is take the recipes that we've been working on for the last year, scale them up from 5-gallon to 3.5 barrel batches, which is quite an increase. Understand how to tweak the system and get it to do what I want it to do, and then be able to brew a product. So we're looking at probably mid-August to have our first batch of beer that I'll feel that it's ready to go on sale. Our intended clients are going to be restaurants and pubs and taverns in the mid-Hudson Valley that are looking for another wonderful local beer to feature. At least starting out, we're going to be only offering it in kegs. So it'll be the small 6-gallon kegs or the more traditional half keg sizes. But we'd like to get the word out to restaurants and taverns who can contact us, and we'll contact them and bring in a little sample, and we'll see how it goes from there.
When we return, a look at a program in Ulster County recognizing students for their work in the school and the community. We'll be right back.